Molly had grown up some, and she felt very confident that she could stay and take care of her three little sisters. And so we felt real good about leaving her home with them. So we would pile into the car. Yes, we did have a car then, but it was our first car after we were married. Because when we were married, we just didn't have a car. And into town we'd go. What did we use for money? Well, we didn't have any. So we'd drive the car into town and we'd park on Washington Boulevard. And there we'd sit and watch the people go by. Some fat and some tall and some short. Well, it was more fun. We'd just sit there and laugh and laugh. Did we go to a show? No, we were making our own show. So we'd take turns, and Earl would take his turn first, and he'd get out and he'd walk on the sidewalk in front of the car, and he'd do a little jig and dance and bow to the car. And then we had so much fun. Then it was my turn, and I'd get out and take my turn. Do the same thing with laughter and fun. Up and back. And then after he'd had his turn, he'd come back to the car, and it was my turn. And out I'd go. I had a real hard time to outdo Earl, and which I never did, because he was such a lot of fun and did such crazy things. But I tried, and he'd laugh and laugh at me as I go by. And then, after we had had our entertainment, we'd start home again. Did we go out to eat? No. We didn't go in to eat, but we did have a wonderful hamburger stand on the way home. And I believe they served the best hamburgers that I have ever tasted. And without fail, every Saturday night on the way home, we would have a hamburger. Then home we'd go, and as we'd go into the house, we could hear the laughter and the giggles of the poor girls, and we knew what to expect, because they would always be dressed in their chenille robes, which we had stretched a point and given them for Christmas. And they would ballet and dance and sing and really put on a burlesque show, a real fun show. And we'd have to sit down and watch them finish their show after we'd get home. Well, I kind of believe that was the beginning of Molly's dancing career, which she has left on and is still teaching dancing at the Deseret Gym in Ogden. What a carryover. But so many fine, fond memories cherished with it. Yes, we had lots of fun in our basement home. We entertained a lot. It seemed like it was just big enough for any size crowd we wanted to bring in. And the kids had their parties, and we had our home evenings, and we had just a right good, all-around good life. And of togetherness, too, which was fulfilling what Father had taught us, my dear Father. Well, these three girls had been a part of the ward and loved by all. And then we decided our family wasn't complete because we had no sons. I'm sure Earl had always wanted sometime to have a son, and so had I. I had had my patriarchal blessing, and in it said I would be a mother of sons, which I had decided was going to be son-in-laws. and which I will tell you about these son-in-laws later on, because they are very, very dear to our hearts. But at this time, I went to going back again to the basement. Son-in-laws, but not sons. You will be a mother of sons, as it was written given to me in my patriarchal blessing. He's really didn't he, what he was talking about, because in 1943, Brent, on July the 5th, came into our family and joined our family tree. Yes, he was a redhead, and such a sweet baby that was loved by his 4 sisters so very dearly. I can remember when they told me in the delivery room, I should say, that the baby was a boy. I just couldn't believe it. But when they brought him to me in my room, the very first thing I did was take his diaper off. And sure enough, he was a real boy. Well, as I say, we had been once more blessed, and our family grew to 5. Well, we had so much fun with Brent that we thought we'll try once more and see if we can get a brother for Brent. And we were doubly blessed, because not too long after he was born, in 1945, in April, the 3rd day, I went to the hospital again, and David came into our home. Well, I can remember so well when they brought him to me and put him in my arms in the hospital. I said, "Oh, you little Earl Cragun." He looked just like his dad. And I said to him then, "I hope you grow up to be just like your dad." And he has. He really has. And so many people say that Dave looks like his dad. Oh, what fun those 2 boys had together. It was just a joy to watch him. Connie kind of grinning, and she looks at me as if to say, "What about all that fighting that went on?" True enough, there were fights. Chased each other with knives, they wrestled, and but many's the time I pulled them off from each other and held my breath, screamed at them. But within very few minutes afterwards, they were loving each other again. And to this very day, their love for each other stands out, and they are true brothers. Bless them. Well, this made 6 children in our basement home. And really, we were bulging the seams. We had only had one real bedroom. Our living room was arched into another room, which when there were only the little girls, we had a double living room, and it was fixed up very pretty. But later on, we had to make that into a bedroom too. And then we had another room that was a bedroom, and then the little back bedroom that wasn't used for a bedroom at all at the beginning finally held 5 people. Can you believe it? 5 people. You just can't imagine it. We had double bunk beds, and then, but we still had fun. One of the fun times we remember, all these kids coming and getting in bed with us. All up and down both sides, we had kids, and we'd laugh and do exercises and have more togetherness and more fun. Well, we decided that our family wasn't complete. We needed another little precious baby. We just felt like we had been so blessed that probably this wouldn't happen. I was having a little trouble with my health at this time. I'd go into the doctor, and the doctor would say, Millie, don't you think your family's complete so that we can do some corrective work for you? And I'd say, oh no, not yet. I want one more baby. And the day came when we found out that we were going to have this other baby. We were still living in the basement house, but we had started to rebuild. I shouldn't say rebuild, because we just built up on top of our basement house. And I remember I was carrying this little spirit, and they had taken the roof off our basement house to build on up. And during the time that they were trying to get the roof on, then the flooring, which would be the flooring for the new home, we had one of the worst rain periods that I can remember. And the little kids were in their bunk beds, and they could look right direct out onto the ground, and talk to the cats and the dog that might be passing by. But the rain really came in, and our wallpaper was hanging in strings from the rooms, and we knew something had to give somewhere. And here I was, just about ready to go to the hospital and have this little blessing that was coming to us. So we talked to our family, and bless their heart, our brothers and sisters on both sides of our family said, we'll take the children into our homes. You can't sleep there. They were crawling out of bed and wading in water. And you come too, and until after your baby's born. Well, I tell you, that was a scary feeling to have your kids all dealt out and going to the hospital. No home, really. It was in the process of building upstairs. But the Lord always takes care of His own. And time went on, and the baby was due, and I didn't have the baby, and it went on for a whole month after the baby was due. And the doctor said, all that's wrong with you, Millie, is you're worried. You need to get back into that basement house. Well, we just didn't know how on earth we were ever going to do that. But Earl, bless his heart, with the help of others and my help, we got things dried up. They had got the flooring on, and we cleared out that basement house and went back into it. Moved our kids back into the basement house, and it really worked. The doctor knew what he was saying, because within a week after I moved back, I went to the hospital. I had relaxed enough to have this precious little baby. What was it? Oh, you all know. It was our baby, Connie. I'll tell you, she was something different. She had the biggest brown eyes, and she was quite bald, but we could tell that the hair on the base of her little head was cold black, and she was going to be a brunette. Something different than we'd ever had. She, true enough, had gone over a month being born, and the nurses at the hospital just really got a bang out of her. She'd smile right from the very start, and they'd bring her to me and they'd say, you just can't take this baby home. We've just all fallen in love with her because she seems so much older. Well, where were we going to live? We just didn't know. They had the basement home had been torn up again because the carpenters couldn't work with it like it was. We had no place to go. Me in the hospital, my kids around with their good-hearted aunts and uncles. And time went on, and it was time to go home. And Earl had been to motel after motel, seeing if we could come there. But you'll never find a motel that's willing for 9 people to move in with no set time to move out. We just couldn't find a place to live. And one day, Earl, my dear brother Earl, which I've always called my brooder, and my gallant knight, came into the hospital. And he says, don't worry. Things will take care of themselves. Don't worry. Mary, my sister Mary, had insisted we come there when we had to leave the hospital. And so we did go there. The kids were still with their aunts and uncles. Brett and Dave came in to stay with us and at Mary's to be with their little baby sister. For, I think, about 2 weeks. And then in came Brother Earl again. And he said, guess what? We've cleared half of our home out downstairs. We've moved over, and you're coming home. He was then living in the big house. He and Reuben had made an exchange, and Earl had gone into the big home because Earl had so many kids, 10 to be exact, and so he was living in the big home. Oh, go home with all my kids. That was a dream come true to be able to do that. And bless he and Ruth's heart, we went home into the big storybook house on the hill with our 7 beautiful children that God had sent to us. We spent, Connie was born, oh my, I must tell you when she was born on November the 10th, 1947, at 2:55 on a Saturday afternoon. I'll tell you, she was loved by not only our family then, but she was loved by Earl's and Ruth's family. They seemed to have to be in on the bathing and the feeding and everything. And being born in November, we were there for Christmas in the old storybook house on the hill. And what a Christmas. I think we figured there were 27 of us. Yes, they had their Christmas tree in their part of the house. We had our Christmas tree in our part of the house. But we were all one great, big, happy family. I can remember that one night, we sent 4 girls, beautifully dressed in formals, to their school party. Ruth Ann and Marion, Ruth's oldest girls, and Molly and Janet, my oldest girls. Oh, they looked so beautiful in formals, leaving the storybook house to go to their party. A memory I cherish. Really, I do. Well, time went on, and 4 months we lived there with Ruth and Earl. Mom and Dad Cragun would come down and had more fun taking pictures of all of us, because, as I've said, we were one big, happy family. A Christmas I shall never forget. We talk about it now. The kids that were old enough remember it well, too. Well, while we're talking about Christmas, I must say I took Connie, our baby, to the Christmas play, and she was only 6 weeks old, and she sat up on my lap and watched everything that went on. True enough, she never seemed to be a baby. She walked at 8.5 months in just chatting to you, and Connie always, she'd sit up and watch just from the time she was born and seemed just one with us. She brought more love into our family than you can ever imagine. And we have always said that her love into our family was something that we cherish, every one of the kids. She has always been very, very special, and is right to this day. Well, time marched on, and our home, yes, you wonder about our home. It was completed. And we moved into our home in March of the March of, let's see, Connie was born in 1947, so it was in the March of 1948. I can remember taking Connie in her basket up to paint late at night from Aunt Ruth's, because we'd work into the wee hours of the morning trying to get our painting done, because we had to save money, had to save pennies everywhere we could to build our home. We had been so blessed the year that Brent was born. Financially, we had the biggest apricot crop that we have ever had, and it was at that time that we paid off our mortgages on our home and could start to save money to build our home. It was completed, and so very beautiful. I remember holding sort of well, it wasn't an open house, but I had Daughters of Pioneers come to my home that month, and I was the hostess, and it was an open house that night. Everybody went everywhere, and we were so proud of our home. And before the school year ended in May, Janet had the first party that was given by the kids in our new home. It became a haven for all of us, and so much fun took place again there with our seven children, and it made a a wonderful family. And, well, Connie, that, I think, kind of completes another chapter.
Some of my earliest memories of home and being a young child are trips that we used to take out to the good earth, out in the orchards to pick fruit. Well, maybe you could tell us a little bit about those early days in the fields.
Well, the early days in the orchard were real fun days, although they were very necessary days because that was during our harvest. And we depended an awful lot on our harvest of our food, even though Earl was an educator and taught school and was principal. We still, with our big family, had to have another income. And as time, we had bought land from Dad Cragun along the way and from Aunt Eva, not Aunt Eva, it was Aunt Violet, Dad's sister, property up in the field, and hers was orchard land too. And then we had the good earth. Oh, I don't know how many acres we've got out there on the good earth, but a great many, and it was all planted in fruit. So with our big family, we had to do the harvesting. We taught the children from the time they were just wee little tots to go to the orchard. I can remember so many fun things that happened out there, along with our busy days. One thing I do remember is when we talk about how young they were, even when Helen was just a little toddler, we'd take her out and set her under a cherry tree, a sour cherry tree, because the limbs grow closer to the ground. And she would sit, we'd give her a bucket, and she'd sit and pick sour cherries, pie cherries. And we just really got a kick out of her. As the kids grew up, we could, and in turn were wee ones out there, we could almost follow their path by the cherry pits. They ate and had fun right along with the work of the older ones. I remember Brent climbing the trees. He and Dave could always climb trees, and even Connie would go to the tippity top when it got her turn to be the young one out in the orchard. And this one incident that I must tell you about. Brent had climbed the tree, and I was picking below him, and all at once I heard the limbs break and looked up, and Brent was coming from the very top of the tree, and he was just a little piker, and I grabbed him by the seat of his pants and held him in midair, breaking his fall so he wasn't hurt. Oh, another time that was fun was an incident that happened. Connie was out in the orchard with us, and she was just a little, how old would you say you were, Connie? You've heard this story before, but
I must have only been about maybe 5 or 6.
I wouldn't be any older than that. And we had Mexicans working in the orchard. We always seemed to have Mexican help in the orchard, but we try to keep them in a group, the Mexican pickers, and the white, our family and the ones that came from the town to help pick, we'd pick with in another part of the orchard. Well, one day, a busy day, Connie was meandering around under the trees, and Earl looked at her and he said, "Little girl, why don't you go back with your own people and pick where they are?" And she looked up at him, Connie looked up at him with almost tears in her eyes, and she said, "Daddy, I am with my people. This is where I'm supposed to be." We've laughed so much because he tried to send her over to pick with the Mexicans.